what actually is fear? Well, I've briefly talked about this in another video, but I want to take the time to go a little bit more deeply and explain some of the aspects about fear that I have found to be true. Fear stands for false expectations appearing real. Now, what do I mean when I say that? Whose expectations and what is false about it? Well, again, everything that we're comparing to is against the creator's view of a particular thing. So when we're talking about fear, fear is actually the result of when we humans turn our beliefs away from God. It is that turning away that creates a situation where we have false expectations. Of course, all expectations are false because all of them are non-loving. And again, how do we know that? We know this because the Creator honors our free will and puts no expectations on us to worship her or to do what He wants. We can do whatever we want. That is what free will essentially is. Now, of course, when we're talking about free will, we must acknowledge that man can attempt to stop us from using our free will. That happens all the time. And there are laws that the Creator has created that hold this place together that attempt to correct us. So if we're using our free will in an out of harmony with love way, the laws of this place will attempt to direct our behavior to get us to release that error. Some call it karma, some call it cause and effect. We'll talk about that in later videos, but I want to stick to fear for this video here, okay? Now, how does terror play into this? Well, terror is actually the most intense version of fear. And this is a term that gets thrown around all the time by governments, by people, by the media, and very rarely is it actually defined or given any kind of context. I feel that a terrorist is any person or entity that prevents any person from expressing themselves in a loving way. Which, if you think about it, is just about everybody in certain situations. A lot of people don't like feeling fear, and a lot of people don't even like to acknowledge that we have fear trapped inside of us. Why is this? Why are we in so much denial about the truth that we are all full of fear? Well, there's a few reasons that I understand about this, but one main reason is it locks us up. When we feel fear, oftentimes we freeze, and we feel powerless, and we feel vulnerable, even as an adult. People don't like feeling vulnerable, and people don't like feeling like the feeling of being locked up or frozen. Why does that happen in that way? Well, I believe I understand some of why that happens. I'm going to attempt to show you through this visual demonstration. As we have discussed in previous videos, when your soul incarnates into the physical and spirit body that your parents created through the act of intercourse, you start absorbing their non-loving emotional state. Now, what do I mean when I say that? Well, for example, let's say a young couple gets pregnant. Well, there's a lot of fears associated with raising a child or raising children. Let's say you already have children, and then you have your partner gets pregnant again, and now you've got another one on the way. How are you going to pay for their life? How are you going to pay for their school? How are you going to pay for their food? How are you going to pay for your house? What if you get fired? What if you don't even have a job? See, it's these kinds of fears that when we experience, we're actually passing on to the child. We do this because we're not actually allowing ourselves to feel our fear. We are living in the fear, right? Living in the fear is keeping our emotions suppressed, pretending they're not there, or pushing them down, rather than allowing ourselves to succumb to the emotion and just letting it out of us. So going back to our example of financial fear, if a person is feeling financial fear, it is impossible for them to be loving in that moment. You see, because remember, fear is the opposite of love, because fear is a result of us turning our beliefs away from the Creator. Okay? So, anytime you as a parent are feeling fear for any reason, you are not loving in that moment. It's not possible. Okay? Now, I'm not making judgments about anyone. I'm just saying the truth. This is how it works. Okay? So, let's say you have a child who's in the womb. Okay? Let's say this is your timeline of your life. Now, I'm going to use me as an example here. I'm 34 years old currently at this time. So let's pretend this is the timeline of my life, okay? Well, before I'm born, when I'm in the womb, all this red represents the non-loving emotions that I, as a fetus, am absorbing from my parents' emotional state. So here you can see it's quite a lot, right? So any time there's any fear about any topic, I'm absorbing it, okay? Now, we've been talking about finances, but let's say my mother was intimate with more than one man near the time of my conception. Well, if there's uncertainty about the origins of the father, the child inside the womb absorbs those fears too. Okay? Now, we don't want, as a young child, we do not have the ability and we do not want to feel our grief. Part of this is for self-preservation because we are locked into our environment and we are defenseless and we are at the mercy of our parents or whoever's taking care of us. So we develop internal mechanisms for self-preservation purposes. And the Creator understands this. She sees it all. As we go through life, you start to develop your own free will and you start interacting in the world as your own separate person. However, all the fear back when you were a fetus is still in you, okay? And as we've talked about, it shuts down your ability to manifest loving situations. It shuts down your ability to experience positive emotions like happiness and joy and bliss and pleasure, okay? Until you take responsibility for yourself to feel out, to allow those fears and anger and grief to pass through you, it's going to stay inside of you and continue to hinder your entire being, okay? Now, let's say I'm 34. I'm no longer a fetus. I'm a free-thinking adult man that doesn't really attract a lot of dangerous situations. But it is my responsibility to feel out my fear from my past, okay? This is about taking responsibility for your own emotional state, okay? Now, here's how it gets to locking us up. When a person attracts an event through their soul, it will take them back to the age they were when they experienced that particular fear. And if you can imagine here, when you're a fetus, you have no muscle development, you have no way to move, you have no way to defend yourself. You feel powerless because you are powerless. So as a 34-year-old, if you start feeling your fear, it's going to transport you back to when you first absorbed that particular fear. And guess what? If you're out in the world and you start feeling that fear and you lock up, it's going to be very easy for another person who is in a dark condition to take advantage of you. One difficult example of this is in rape. Oftentimes, oftentimes when a person's being raped, they go back into their fear and they lock up and they can't move. And then the rapist is able to sometimes do whatever they want, okay? And then when the rape victim comes forward to express what has happened to them, oftentimes people will have doubt and not understand how that event can actually happen. Because they say things like, well, why didn't you fight back? Or why didn't you just push the person away? Well, it's because of this concept right here. It's because we lock up and return back to the emotional age of when we first absorbed that error. Okay? So this is part of the reason why we have fear about actually feeling our own fear. So my advice to anyone would be to create a safe, comfortable environment for you to feel your own fear. I feel my own fear in my house, in my bedroom, okay? Now, I'm fortunate in the sense that, like, I have my own space, and I live alone. I don't live with anyone. Well, I do have a cat. I don't own the cat. The cat is my roommate. So it's me and Candles the cat. And because I'm not worried about how other people are viewing me in any particular situation, if I start to get into my emotions and feel my fear, and by the way, that looks like your body will shut down your muscles and you will start shaking and vibrating. This is best accomplished in your bedroom where you feel safe, or any place where you feel safe. Terror embeds itself in our physical and spirit bodies. Feeling it transports you back to the emotional age state when first absorbed. It takes courage to feel your own fear. It takes bravery to feel your own fear. I would encourage you to be less concerned about making judgments about what is in yourself. Keep an open mind. Pray to God for truth. Pray to God. Let God know that you want to take responsibility for yourself. You want to feel out your emotions, and please help me feel my emotions. Not feel my emotions for me. Not take away my pain. God doesn't do that. God doesn't take away our pain because we played a role in creating our pain via the laws that the Creator created. So, like, why would the Creator override her own laws and take away someone's pain when the reason why the pain is there is because of our own actions and the actions of those in our network and our family? So, again, I invite you to experiment with this and create a safe space so that you can be vulnerable, so that you don't feel judged, and that you can feel out the actual emotional material that embeds itself in your body. This will take a very long time, and you will not be able to do it in one sitting. Don't make judgments about failing or passing, okay? There is no failing or passing here. Imagine you're a disgusting, filthy glass of water with a huge amount of sediment in it. How do you clean the water? First, you take a filter with a large mesh and you pour that glass of water into another container. And that mesh, that filter, will capture the largest, most obvious material. And then you keep doing it again and again until you've got all the large material out. And then you change your filter to a smaller mesh. And you pour that glass of water through the mesh again and it collects some material. And then you keep doing it and keep doing it until your glass of water is totally pure. That's what we're doing with our soul. Same concept. We have huge amounts of fear in us. Don't be discouraged about how much is there, okay? This does not feel good when it's coming out of you, But what has happened to me is, after feeling my fear for some amount of time, it actually starts to feel almost pleasurable because I recognize that I'm doing something positive for myself. Good luck, love and peace.